Today we're going to look at some tips of how to pass your driving test first time, but we're actually going to look at it from the driving examiner's perspective. Now, I have been lucky enough to speak to a fair few driving examiners, so this is, so to speak, straight from the horse's mouth. First tip that we're looking at today is don't get distracted by the examiner tapping the tablet. It's really important that you understand that examiners don't just press the tablet to issue faults, okay? It's not just a minor or serious button tap every time you see them pressing something. Driving examiners actually have to press a button on the tablet to say when you're pulling over on the side of the road, to say when you're emergency stopping, doing any maneuver, anything at all. So it's not always negative when they're pressing the tablet. So try not focus on them, all right? Because that leads to a lot of people getting serious faults or minor faults because they're not actually focused on the road. Quick story time. Recent student actually went out, did a test, they failed, and they failed for looking at the gear stick. They've never done that before, because if they had done that with me, I wouldn't have taken them for the driving test. So I asked him, I said, Chris, why were you looking at the gear stick? Well, what happened, you know? Was it nerves? He said, no, I wasn't. I was looking at the examiner. I was trying to see what they were pressing on the iPad. Well, Chris, don't do that. Shame. So moral to the story, try not focus on the examiner, okay? It's really important you try and look ahead, and that's going to help you massively in your driving test. Now, the second major point is to make sure, forget your MSM routine, your MSPSL routine, your safety checks, they're all really important, but if you're not driving smoothly with the examiner in the car, you're probably not going to make it to the end of the test, okay? Now, what I mean by smoothly, I mean any sudden stopping and starting, fast acceleration, hard stopping, that is not going to work. The examiner is not going to feel comfortable. I wouldn't feel comfortable. So if you need to check this, if you're doing lessons at home, ask mum or dad to sit in the car and, see, is he driving smooth? It has to be super smooth to make sure the examiner is feeling safe and comfortable, okay? That is your priority on your driving test, is to make sure the examiner is comfortable. So when I say ignore the MSM routine, don't ignore them completely, but what I'm saying is you do need to make sure your driving is super duper smooth. Okay, way to test this, you might want to ask the person who owns the car before you do, but put a bowl of water, on the floor of the passenger seat, and basically you're aiming to drive and not spill that water. If you do spill the water, you can smoothen up your driving some more. If you're not spilling the water, then that is a very good sign. You are ready. Okay, examiner also mentioned to me that a lot of people don't pass their tell me question. It's like they don't even look, they don't even try to answer it, like they haven't bothered revising. And maybe that's because it's only a minor, and they're thinking, well, why bother? But it's also the very beginning. If you look at the driving test as a job interview, you don't go up to the job interview, and not have any idea and not done any research, because if you do, you're not getting the job. That's how you're approaching the driving test if you don't know you tell me question, okay? And they've got all the questions and answers, and you're just telling the examiner that you've done no revision at all. So if you've not prepared for that, then why on earth would you be any better on the driving test? So it's not a good start. It's going to put the beginning of the driving test into a sort of sour mood. So do your best and make sure you revise, because it's not hard. It's got all the questions and answers online. It's not really an excuse. Okay, number 4 is left is best. If you have a choice of 2 lanes and the examiner hasn't told you which way you're going, that's because they're assuming you're going straight ahead, which means you should be positioning yourself in the left lane. If you're going across a roundabout with 2 lanes, you're going straight ahead. If you've got a choice, be in the left lane. Okay, there's nothing wrong with being in the right lane, especially if you're turning right or if you're overtaking. But if you end up in the right lane, for instance, going across a roundabout, and you end up going a bit slower than everyone else, and they start to undertake you, well, the examiner's going to say you've caused them to undertake you by being in the overtaking lane and staying in there, hogging it, essentially. And that's what you're going to end up failing your test for, forcing other people to undertake, which is against the law, and they're going to say that's your fault. So left is always best. Try and be in the left lane, and people do fail for this a lot. Number 6 is really research your zebra crossings and your pedestrian crossings. And I know that sounds obvious, but the number of times I come across students when they try and go when a person's crossed halfway across the zebra crossing is pretty insane. And also on the test, when you've got your nerves going, it really is a good idea to do some research. Make sure you understand that on your zebra crossings and pedestrian crossings, you cannot go until the pedestrian's feet are off the road, completely off the road. And a lot more people fail on that than you might think. Now, this one also catches people out on a regular basis. And again, I put it down to nerves because I don't believe anyone goes for the driving test, you know, and intentionally doesn't do this. And it's your safety check, you know. Anytime that you're pulled over on the side of the road, okay, the main thing the examiner, or one of the main things the examiner is looking for, is to make sure that you are checking over that shoulder. And it's not just a slight turn of the head, it's actually turning and having a quick move, especially if the car's stopped, you know. So we pulled over on the side of the road. We've just finished an emergency stop. We've just finished any maneuver whatsoever. We need to make sure we're checking the blind spot. And this here, you've got a pillar here, which means you can't see behind that. So you're actually gonna have to turn and move slightly to look behind that pillar. All right, and that's really important. And by doing that, you're gonna clearly show the person sitting there, when they see the back of your head, that you have checked, okay? Now, quick story time. Student Alex, he'll know this. He was actually, on your driving test, in case you didn't know, you generally pulled over around 3 times, can be more, generally 3 times. However, Alex went on his driving test, he was pulled over 6 times, okay? And then he did an emergency stop on top, so that counts as a 7th time. Now, the reason was that when he was pulled over for the first 3 times, the examiner didn't feel like he was checking his blind spot, you know, and he's not really done that before, so maybe he was just giving it a slight glance, okay? So the examiner continued to pull him over to make sure, and he did start checking his blind spot, and that's why Alex just about scraped his pass on his driving test. He did pass, but it was close, and that was just because the examiner didn't feel like he was checking his blind spot, and it's deadly not to. So really do your best to move your head and check around that pillar. The next one, which I have another video on, is actually if you forget the speed limit, try and look at the street lights. Use the street light rule. If there are street lights and you can't see a sign because, you know, the nerves have got to you, then chances are it's a 30-mile-per-hour zone. Do that for around 10 seconds. You should then see a speed sign within that time if there is any different, if it's 40 or 50. If you've gone a little while at 30, in the zone, it's too slow, but you're still going to end up passing your test rather than going too fast, in which case you would fail your test straight away. If there are no street lights, then of course, and there's no speed signs, then of course it is national speed limit, which again means you can go up to a safe speed of probably 60 miles per hour on a single carriageway, but only if it's safe to. And finally, this was another tip straight from the examiner, and as they said, it is a bit of a boring one, but it is fact. You know, if you want to pass your driving test, you need around 70 hours of experience. And I'm not talking about everyone, you know, some might be a bit less, but overall on average, it's going to be around that. Okay, now that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be with a driving instructor. If you've got anyone in the family or close friend or whatever that's willing to insure you on the car and take you out, then that is your best option. Experience is your best option and best route to passing your driving test. And that is it. So thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed that, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you all very soon.